I lost the love of my life and it all started with a post. What type of pie they used to have to make a MF throw his jacket over a puddle? She felt disrespected and cut me off without a word. Was that post the real reason or just an excuse? At 21, I'm left questioning everything. A 21-year-old male was in a relationship with someone I genuinely believed was the love of my life, a 20-year-old female. We shared the same faith, held similar values, and connected on a level I had never experienced with anyone else. She was shy, soft-spoken, kind, and possessed a calming presence that I greatly admired. I envisioned her as my future wife, someone with whom I wanted to create a peaceful and happy life. Our relationship had depth. We made mutual promises, not just the significant ones like resolving disagreements and never giving up on each other, but also smaller commitments such as never leaving each other on scene and always sending a good night message to keep each other updated before going to bed. Those small gestures mattered to both of us. They helped us feel secure and connected. However, about a week before our relationship ended, she went to stay with a close female friend for some time, and during that period I sensed a noticeable change. She became distant, our conversations diminished, her energy shifted. I did not push, I merely assumed she was busy having fun and desired some space, so I gave it to her. One night, I sent her a simple goodnight message stating that I loved her, and she read it but did not respond. For a relationship in which we agreed that such matters made a difference, this felt like a silent warning sign. The very next day, she encountered a post I had reshared on social media, a silly, edgy joke that someone else had screenshot and posted on X, formerly Twitter. It carried a dark humor vibe. I did not think twice before sharing it. To me, it was just an edgy joke, neither a personal statement nor an attack on women, and definitely not something I anticipated would be taken seriously. This was the post in question. What type of person did they use to have to make a man throw his jacket over a puddle? Yet she saw it and she took it very seriously. She expressed that she felt disrespected and hurt and that the post caused her to question the kind of man I was. Then she broke up with me, insisting that I should not contact her again. She deleted me from all platforms. No conversation, no grace, just a complete cutoff. I was stunned. I have never apologized to anyone as sincerely as I did with her. I set aside my ego and attempted to explain that it was never intended to be offensive. I reminded her of how I had always treated her with respect, love, and consistency. I even remained silent after she told me not to call her, believing I was honoring her boundaries. I didn't press further. In fact, I later realized she meant I should have reached out and still called her even after she requested I not do so. I ultimately stopped texting and just called her. The truth is, I could not gather myself enough to explain over the phone, and our conversation ended with us hanging up. Following the call, she deleted me from everything, but I still had her number. Much has transpired since, and this is the first moment I have had the emotional capacity to sit down and express everything, so I composed a long message where I properly articulated my thoughts and apologized. She read the message but did not respond, which I find understandable. What stings is the feeling that everything I did for her, everything we built, was discarded over one post. If I genuinely held misogynistic views, if I had disrespected women, if I did not value her, I would have used her, lied to her, or mistreated her. But I did not. I showed up. I offered her love. My parents raised me to treat others well, especially my father, who instilled in me the importance of respecting women deeply. That post did not represent who I am, and she knew that. I understand that I made a mistake. I am not playing the victim. However, I also feel that her reaction was much deeper than just that post. The distance had already begun to manifest. The instances of being left unseen, the ignored "I love you," and the sudden change in energy all suggest that she may have already started to check out, and the post merely provided her a reason to leave. I no longer know how to feel. I understand that I will eventually need to move on, but it is difficult when it still seems like I was not fully heard. Update. First of all, I want to express my gratitude to everyone who commented on this and helped open my eyes to the situation. I truly appreciate all the responses, even the more critical ones. I did not anticipate my post gaining as much attention as it did. For some individuals, feedback like that might be overwhelming, and yes, I could have allowed the harsher comments to affect me, but I posted with the understanding that I would receive a spectrum of perspectives. That was the primary goal, to comprehend where I went wrong and to learn from it. I did not repost that joke to harm anyone, but that does not mean it did not hurt someone I cared about. It is a lesson I will carry with me. Several people pointed out that humor is subjective, and what may be amusing in a private group chat or among friends might not be perceived the same way in a relationship or public domain. They are entirely correct. I have come to realize that I need to exercise more mindfulness about what I post and who it may affect. Some suggested that this situation likely was not solely about the post, and I have reflected on that extensively. She had begun acting distantly before this incident, and it is possible she was already emotionally preparing to exit the relationship. If the post served as the final straw, I can accept that as well. I cannot control how or why she left, but I can control my response to it. As a man, I will never completely understand how the post in question could impact someone with different experiences, traumas, or boundaries. I am not here to criticize her or any woman at all. I am also not attempting to portray myself as the victim. This post was not intended to seek sympathy. It was about understanding how others viewed the situation so that I could reflect and move forward. What I know for certain is that I have never disrespected her, I never betrayed her trust, and I never treated her poorly. That is something you may not have seen, but it reflects how I genuinely treated her and how I made her feel. She conveyed that to me herself. Whether she later felt scared to admit otherwise or if she was not truthful about it, I will never know. But I know that I made the effort to respect her and make her feel safe with me. That is how my parents raised me, to treat people, especially women, with care and respect. The post itself was quite foolish. I should not have shared something that does not accurately reflect who I am. I know for a fact that if my parents had seen it, they would have also been disappointed in me. Whether this post truly was her last straw, or if something more profound was happening, as some of you suggested, I suppose we will never know. She was genuinely interested in stories involving love triangles and dramatic movie plots, so perhaps there was an element of fantasy involved, or maybe I am simply overthinking it. Regardless, it was her choice, and I must respect that. What I can do now is be more thoughtful regarding what I post in the future, not just for her, but for everyone. And no, this post was not generated by ChatGPT. I have seen those accusations circulating, and I understand why. I work for a company that necessitates a considerable amount of writing. The situation is quite real, and I was genuinely seeking external opinions. I am not asking for forgiveness because at the end of the day, that decision rests with her. I am not even hoping she returns because I indeed messed up and I admit it. To those who have sent kind direct messages and offered insights, thank you. I will move on, I will grow. And I will improve myself because that is what this process is fundamentally about. I am an adult man, and I should have recognized better than to post content like that in the first place. Final updates. I have received numerous private messages from thoughtful individuals who took the time to help me comprehend this situation more thoroughly, and I just want to express my gratitude for their time and effort. I truly appreciate it. Some of those messages impacted me more profoundly than any public comment because they were not attempting to call me out. They were genuinely offering assistance. Initially, I was focused on the post itself. I knew it was foolish and edgy, and I genuinely did not reflect on the implications of sharing it because I did not intend any harm. However, after taking time to consider the feedback and revisiting some of those private messages, and almost every single comment under this thread, I realized that the issue was not simply the meme, but rather what the meme represented, what it implied. How sharing such things, intentionally or otherwise, can normalize a mindset that reduces women to their value in relation to men. One message in particular posed questions I had not previously considered. Why do I find these jokes humorous? Would I be comfortable with someone saying that about my ex? Do I view women differently when they are strangers compared to someone I care about? Those questions resonated with me and genuinely prompted a wake-up call. Although I did not believe I was contributing to a problem, I now understand how posts like these, even when presented as jokes, feed into a broader narrative. I have also observed many comments speculating whether my ex utilized this post as an excuse to leave or whether she had already emotionally exited. Perhaps that is true. Perhaps the post was merely the final straw. But honestly, whether or not there was more at play with her is irrelevant at this point. What matters to me is the lessons I can draw from this and how I conduct myself moving forward. For the record, I always treated her with respect. I was loyal, supportive, and genuinely tried to establish something meaningful with her. However, I have come to realize that even when your intentions are commendable and your actions are solid, one moment can still undermine someone's trust, especially if it conflicts with their values or makes them feel unsafe. I now recognize that for her, the joke might have felt indicative of something deeper, reflecting a side of me she did not anticipate. In such cases, an apology is not always sufficient to mend what was felt. So to the individuals who invested their time to clarify the situation, whether publicly or privately, I finally understand. This is not about defending my character or seeking anyone's forgiveness. It is about personal growth. I am not perfect, but I am also not going to be the same person I was prior to this experience. I am moving forward with greater mindfulness regarding my words, shares, and representation, not just for someone else's comfort, but because I genuinely want to be better. I appreciate everyone who took the time to comment, send a direct message, or share their perspective. Whether you were direct, critical, or compassionate, you helped me see things I had not considered before. I truly value this, and I am leaving this situation with a clearer understanding and a commitment to improve, not only for future relationships, but for the person I aspire to be as a man. I will refrain from updating this post again, or perhaps I will, who knows. Either way, thank you very much. Peace. Story 2. High school was supposed to be about friendships, but I lost them to guilt and misunderstandings. Was I really a friend or just a burden? When Berta said, "You talk about self-harm too much," it shattered me. Now we ignore each other and I wonder, was I ever enough? Hello, I would like to share a part of my life with you, and I hope you can be understanding and supportive, as this is my first post and I am a little nervous, even though everything is anonymous, and you do not know me and I do not know you. Anyway, if you're reading this, that means I was able to overcome my nerves and post it here. All the names I mention have been changed. Let's start with the fact that I am in high school. And when I moved to a new, unfamiliar school with a new environment and some mental health struggles at the time, my goal was to make friends with someone and feel better. In my class, there are groups, and if you are friends with one person, you are also friends with the others. I mean, not always, but sometimes it feels that way. My perception could be very distorted, so I might be mistaken, but anyway, that is not the main point. In my class, I became friends with two boys, let's call one of them Richard and the other Michael, and with a girl who had similar interests, let's call her Ada. At first, we did not talk very much, but over time I grew closer to them and I also became friends with another girl, let's call her Berta. Michael and Richard were together, but I often hung out with them as well. Berta and Ada also spent time together and I was with them too. So it felt like we all became a group, with each person being different or similar in their own way. When we all formed a group, I felt happy, and I wanted to go to school more and more, also because I had a crush on Richard at the time, and I particularly tried to spend most of my time with him or be around him as much as possible. Keep this part in mind. Due to my mental health issues, I felt sad, and sometimes I asked people to hit me since I had forbidden myself from self-harming after doing it every day for about 3 weeks. Spoiler. I went back to self-harming anyway, and it will play a slightly important role in this story, which I will mention later. I gradually started opening up to my friends, and they discovered some of my problems. Ada began spending more time alone or with other girls whom I did not find particularly nice, because there were moments when I did not understand something and felt foolish in front of them. And even though she moved on to others and I stopped talking to her, it was still okay because I had Berta, Michael, and Richard. There were sometimes conflicts between Berta and Michael Richard when they appeared to dislike each other. But there were also times when everything was fine, so I did not pay much attention to it. As I mentioned earlier, I liked Richard, and after one moment I decided to tell him. It turned out he liked me too, but only 30% romantically. The other 70% was as a friend. However, from that moment on, he began to like me more and more, and naturally he wanted to spend more time with me. Simultaneously, Berta also wanted to spend more time with me because I was spending all my time with him, and she mentioned that he was interrupting our conversations, which she really disliked. This led to both of them wanting to be with me while disliking each other. After the event I will describe next, they both wanted to be with me, he because he cared for me, and she because of the loneliness she felt. Later, there was a moment that I believe marked the beginning of how I lost my friendship with Berta. Yes, spoiler alert. Our class had a project to build something, and we decided to work on it as a group. I bought most of the supplies and constructed the houses using sticks. Berta made the walls and placed stones on them. Michael did not do much except bring a utility knife. We did not really instruct him on what to do, so there was not much left for him to do anyway, although that was somewhat his responsibility. Ada was with us and created clay figures and cut cardboard, even though we ultimately did not need the cardboard. Richard worked on the artificially generated image, which was also part of the project. At first, things were enjoyable, and although we had not finished the project, we were having fun while Berta continued to work. Still, I had constructed all the houses, so I had done my part. One day after another group meeting, Berta decided to take all the houses with her, and we all went home as if nothing happened. Then suddenly, she texted me saying some of the houses had fallen apart and she did not know what to do. I replied, "If it is that serious, I will fix it myself," and oh my goodness, how wrong I was. We agreed on a time, and when that day arrived, it was the day right before we were to present the project. 30 minutes before the meeting, I was exhausted. There had been an event earlier that drained me, and I decided to lie down, thinking I would rest for just a moment. However, when I woke up, a whole hour had passed. I looked at the clock, was surprised and slightly frightened, and then noticed my phone. There were about 6 missed calls from Berta, and she said she had waited for an hour like an idiot and had to do everything herself. Once I realized that, I felt so hurt and ashamed. I began crying nonstop with guilt, asking if I could come now and how I could make it up to her, but she said there was nothing to fix anymore and mentioned something about fate, which I did not understand. The next day when we had to turn in the project, I was frightened, and when I saw it, it was in terrible condition. Michael asked what had happened to it, while Berta was irritated and I think even cried. And that made me angry. For some reason, it upset me that she was crying while I was holding back everything. Perhaps it was because of her attitude. She is loud, engages with everyone, her previous friends ignored her, some people mocked her for various reasons, and some girls did not speak to her at all. Still, none of that justifies how she acted. Blaming me without directly saying it, claiming she did everything herself, and jokingly saying things like, "There is this thing called an alarm clock." While I was crying to the point of exhaustion, to the extent that it was difficult to walk and my eyes were red from endless tears. When the teacher asked us to present our project, Berta simply stated that she would not. I, with a trembling voice and body, said I could not and started crying. She called our entire group outside, and while we stood there, I sat down, shaking, crying, and whimpering like a puppy as panic overtook me. She came and asked what was wrong, but every word I attempted to say came out in tears, and she told me to go wash my face. It turned out Michael and Richard were moved to another group and had to start everything from scratch because Berta claimed she did everything herself. After that, she instructed us to decide what to do with the existing project, and I took a piece of paper and left the classroom. Berta sat on a bench crying, shouting that it was her project and she did everything, while I in front of the teacher humiliated myself, crying, apologizing, blaming myself, and saying I would do everything myself even though I had no energy left. She yelled again, which increased my stress. Ada was with us but was not as drained as I was. Also, I forgot to mention something important. Berta informed me that I am difficult to be around because I always talk about wanting to hurt myself, and in a way, she is correct. I did talk about it extensively. I openly shared my thoughts regarding self-harm. For example, once I misplaced my bus card for the third time and said I would hurt myself so severely that the marks would remain for 2 days. I do not engage in anything extreme, so for me, that is a significant deal. Or another time, when I mentioned that I would be getting braces and would no longer be able to self-harm by biting myself, which made me really sad. Berta offered me advice several times, indicating that self-harm is not a healthy coping mechanism, but simply instructing myself to stop does not work. It is not as easy as it sounds. It is not exactly an addiction, but it is still very challenging to stop. While she was expressing all this, I did not follow any of her advice or I completely forgot about it, which upset her as well. Returning to the main topic, both Richard and Berta wanted to be with me, but since I enjoyed spending time with Richard more, even though by then my feelings for him were just friendly, he had almost completely fallen for me. He started becoming moody more often and even began self-harming. Because of all this, I wanted to help him, so I supported him while Berta felt lonely. I just did not know what to do, especially when I enjoyed being with him. I was already on edge, and Berta was pressuring me, expecting me to resolve everything, while I just made things worse by saying I would talk to him so we could all be together, but never actually following through. I believe I am not the only person who sometimes mishears things, forgets, hears what people say, but the words do not process properly, which would lead me to ask Berta about things that were said literally just a moment ago. She would respond with something like "fuwak," implying that I was foolish, and those moments increased, causing her to eventually stop responding to me. I would criticize myself silently, feeling guilt and shame for my questions and for who I was. Every time, I was terrified to say anything because I feared her judgment and misunderstanding, which only deepened my fear of rejection and isolation, even though I only talked to them anyway. Eventually, Berta and I completely stopped communicating, and now we simply ignore each other. When I look at her now, I feel uncomfortable. She irritates me. I feel as though she is superior to me because she is unafraid of judgment, she is free, she does what she enjoys, she dances and performs, while I cannot even claim that I dance when people ask. I simply say I listen to music. She works hard and studies to the best of her ability, while I rarely study for subjects or complete homework until the last minute. Even when I try, and I have been told that sometimes I receive higher grades, it still feels like she puts in greater effort than I do, particularly since I have far more free time than she does. She even takes care of her skin, while I wash my hair only once every 3 days or more. Please do not judge me too harshly for that. I also want to add that when I observe her, I feel guilty because it seems like I complained and whined without taking any action or attempting to rectify the situation. Even though I am not sure if that is accurate because I have forgotten, I feel as though I did not do enough, did not try to understand her, or give her enough attention even though I did sympathize with her when she shared difficult things with me. Perhaps I did not sympathize deeply enough. Did I truly care or was I merely listening? How good of a friend was I? Although I gave her gifts and even now, knowing we do not communicate anymore, I still bought her birthday presents to give her. This has turned out to be quite lengthy, and if you have read it all the way to the end, thank you so much. I would love to hear your thoughts because I have always wanted to share the full story of my life and the situation I am currently in, not with artificial intelligence, but with a real person. Story 3. After 2 chaotic months of confusion and emotional overload, I finally said I didn't want to mess things up. But I spiraled when I missed his train. He once said, just tell me what you need, but I couldn't. Now I'm left wondering, was my anxiety too much for him? I do not possess a gauge. When I attempt to rely on my own judgment, I later discover how profoundly incorrect or illogical my assessments were. It places an immense amount of pressure on me, yet I am aware of the importance of not adopting a victim mentality. I reflect on these issues constantly and seek the perspectives of others frequently. I began dating a man. We had an on and off relationship for approximately 2 years. He never got to know me very intimately, or perhaps he did, I genuinely cannot tell. One day he offered me advice that saved my life. I thought I would never hear from him again, but I recognized that his assistance was significant and that he had no obligation toward me. This is not due to any manipulation on my part. I felt guilty for approaching him, but I also knew he was safe to ask. I appreciated that he directly communicated his desire to spend quality time with me, rather than time when I was feeling sad. In hindsight, I realized that after that, I somewhat withdrew from him. He would often say he understood that adults get busy and that he was not always available, but now I wonder if my failure to see him until 3 months later hurt him. My friends advise me to stop providing disclaimers as it suggests a lack of confidence, but I do not care. The stakes are low and this is a Reddit post. I often contemplate how this impacts others, but there are individuals who do not appreciate hearing all the negative interpretations that someone might project or perceive regarding their actions. We began dating after previously engaging in casual hookups while also enjoying a close friendship. I honestly avoided him at times because I was terrified he might think that my desire to talk to him stemmed solely from a sexual interest. At other times, I feared he might find our conversations bothersome and prefer sex over dialogue. I recognized that sex was the issue. He was aware of how I felt, yet when I attempted to discuss his feelings about my physicality, he assured me that it did not upset him when it likely did. I am not entirely certain. Regardless, he told me he would see me a limited number of times. He could not follow through on that. I wished he would just express this directly. I do not know why. He consistently urged me to state what I wanted or needed, yet that can also become overwhelming, which it did regardless of whether one is direct. I struggled to find that balance. It frightened me that he did not just inform me. I missed his train and had to convince myself not to spiral into anxiety, but I felt terrible. I could imagine he was furious, but I also could not afford to drive myself to madness with fear. I am sure he was perfectly fine and unconcerned. Sometimes things would bother me, yet I would genuinely not care. For example, I become anxious when people make grand gestures on holidays or birthdays. I feel apprehensive, but I do not want to assume that people are engaging in anything negative. Anyway, it seemed to me that there was a level of emotional distance, but he consistently told me to be all in if that is what I desired because I communicated that I was trying to maintain a casual approach. I thought I was perhaps overextending myself, but then I would receive feedback not to be so nonchalant. I did not realize I appeared nonchalant. I do not really know how not to be. I understand that I engaged in behaviors he did not, which made me anxious, but I perceived this as differences in communication style, and honestly, I appreciated those qualities in him. I was a frequent texter. I do not believe he was. There were times when he would engage with me, such as when he spent an entire day on the phone with me, probably because he knew it would make me happy, or perhaps it made him happy that day. I was evidently nervous throughout our relationship. He claimed he made continuous efforts to create a sense of safety. I expressed my appreciation for that, which made it a significant burden when we were breaking up. Surprise. I did, but there were also moments when I felt utterly confused, sometimes dismissed, and at times extremely guilty for calling him during moments I forgot he was busy. However, I did not apologize every single time. Perhaps I should have been more considerate. He told me he was undertaking all the emotional labor. I would become incredibly excited whenever he shared details about his life, as I felt he did not often express those things with me. I was also worried because he appeared so unhappy while we were together, yet I felt powerless to change that. Even if we could not effectively communicate about it, I should have broken up with him instead of allowing him to suffer. He mentioned he thought staying together was beneficial, but that was only after I expressed regret for saying yes to dating. I acknowledge that this is chaotic, but I am sincere. I do not believe either of us intended to hurt one another. I lashed out excessively after our breakup, declaring that I did not want to be friends because everything had been so confusing for me, while he was reassuring me at the same time. It was a stark contrast to our conversation the day before when he first messaged me to end our relationship. I panicked, but we ended the night on good terms. The following day, I was convinced there had to be more to it, and I felt almost frustrated that he would ask me to choose when he said it was painful for him to communicate with me. It felt as if I would be cruel if I stated that despite that, I still wish to be friends. However, I feel a bit guilty because I apologized numerous times, and the items I left for him included many gifts I had given him before our breakup, things I told him I would acquire for him, as well as his belongings from a date we had. We were supposed to meet at 1 a.m. one night, which is not entirely unreasonable, but I was exhausted and had not been sleeping well. I became concerned I would not wake up, so after work, I took medication to nap and ended up waking much later than he had left. People advised me to stop being hard on myself, but I wish I had retrieved his bag and driven to his house that night. I do not understand why I often seem to overwhelm people, yet I recognize this behavior. I offer assistance and people often appear displeased by my offers. However, if I did not want to help, I would not offer. Even if I do not want to assist, people sometimes require help. The crux of this situation is that I have experienced numerous relationships and friendships in which I have panicked. Do I become obsessive? Am I misunderstood? Am I immature for not advocating for myself sufficiently? Do I make my issues too apparent? When I initially started dating him, I attempted to conceal my sadness, but he spoke to me and mentioned that everyone he knows is sad and that it is all right. I do not know which aspect differentiates me, but I understand. I have also accepted that it did not work out, and I know I will find a way to manage. But for goodness sake, I have to apologize to him, whether that means never speaking to him again, apologizing in a specific manner, or simply conveying to him that I care enough to ensure I never put him through anything similar again. I initially encountered him and felt reluctant to become too close, fearing I would jeopardize our relationship. He undoubtedly seemed too good for me. However, I am unsure if I am permitted to be upset. Can I express frustration regarding things I hoped I made clear? I do not even necessarily need to be angry. We merely misaligned often, and it was disheartening, which led to sadness for both of us. I informed him that I did not understand why he appeared so sad about breaking up with me, considering it seemed he had wanted to do so for quite some time. I explained that I could not remain friends because I would grow paranoid about not being able to ask him certain questions, as I do with my other friends, to ensure I understood our relationship correctly. I am also aware that he likely had some discomfort with me, potentially viewing me as a red flag, because one day I was crafting a self-care project and humorously remarked, "I think I need a manual." He responded, "I think I can simply be kind and figure it out." I believe one part of me understands that he dislikes being told what to do before he reaches a conclusion, but another part feels that it was for reasons I will not detail right now, laughing out loud. I did not aim to blame him or portray myself as a victim in our conversations, but I do not know if this post reflects my projections. How can I avoid being like this? How can someone not have reservations about others? And what is the least offensive way to communicate those reservations? His main concern with me was that I did not express some of my anxieties, yet it felt like there were other things I did that did not please him. I believe I cannot be friends with him for my own well-being as well. It is not healthy for me to feel as if someone perceives me as judgmental or for me to experience all these anxious thoughts because of one person. However, it is not just him, it is literally every human being all the time. I sent out a meeting invitation, typed it correctly, yet in my mind I overanalyzed it and became anxious. No one even noticed, and it took about 1 minute, but no one comprehends my level of distress, not even my therapist at times. I am literally so incredibly confused. Additionally, I feel terrible for selecting him to have such strong boundaries with, yet he consistently urged me to communicate my desires with him and others. I genuinely feel guilty that he had to offer me this advice. What confounds me is that I would call him, I would make attempts to open up, and I undoubtedly made mistakes. I tend to overtalk when I am anxious. I discuss my depression too freely but also remain somewhat guarded, I suppose. I would not appreciate when I shared a story about something I regarded as annoying or humorous. He would indicate that I seemed normal considering my reaction because he did not grasp what I was describing. I would respond, yes, I feel normal about it, even though it would sometimes hurt his feelings. I could simply choose not to discuss my concerns, but that would lead to pushing people away, suppressing my feelings, or masking my true self. I would be excluding myself from the emotional intimacy that I crave. I simply cannot manage all of these complexities and rules. Story 4. My relationship went from, "I can't wait to build a life together" to "I dread conversations in just a year." He mocked my disability, played video games all night, and I lost my voice. I'm starting to wonder if I'll ever escape this dark shipwreck of a relationship. I am posting with a throwaway account. I am participating in a game of chicken in my relationship to determine who will leave first. It is amusing how life operates. You transition from joyfully planning a future with someone to dreading conversations with them. This is my first time living with someone, and it has been a year. It began on a rocky note and only deteriorated. We were in a long-distance relationship, and he moved to be with me, as we had mutually agreed that it was the most sensible decision. Looking back, I suppose it could be considered a bit of an ultimatum. I stated that I would not be comfortable continuing the relationship after reaching 3 years if we did not have a plan for our future, which we had extensively discussed during the first year of being together. Furthermore, if we were not already living together, which he had promised to do after graduating college, I would not want to continue the relationship. I felt that long distance was ultimately unfair to both of us in the long run. I acknowledge that I am partly responsible for urging us to move in together, possibly before he was ready. However, I believe he is at fault for concealing his true self. Before the move, he was kind. He cared about my feelings, listened when I spoke, and had goals while planning for our future. He was also family-oriented and genuinely wanted to be involved in my life, going on dates and spending time together. He was an inherently good person. However, during the first week of living together, he belittled me and initiated arguments every day. He casually mocked a family member's disability, one that I also share. He remained awake all night playing video games, even on nights when I had time off from work and was attempting to catch up on rest. He would yell at the game while keeping me awake multiple times throughout the night. He often slept until 3 p.m. or even later. While I was waking up at 5 or 6 a.m., this became our new normal. He was unemployed for half a year while I was in school full-time and working a third-shift job. At one point, I held 3 jobs. I would ask when he intended to start working, but I could never get a clear answer. I had been told that he transferred his job in advance to my hometown since his company has offices here. Unfortunately, this was not true. I began encouraging him to apply for a part-time job, just to get him out of the house until he resumed his official job. But he refused, essentially claiming it was beneath him to work for a certain amount. I could not comprehend this because, in my view, anything was better than sleeping all day and earning no money, right? The good morning texts ceased, and instead I received Apple Pay requests for fast food, gas money, or his bills. Life became difficult. Understandably, I began to feel stressed. He would attempt to kiss me and I would pull away. He would try to touch me in general and I would turn away. I am not naturally a very affectionate person. I have autism and a long history of sexual assault, so unexpected touching makes me uncomfortable, particularly when I am not in a good mental space. How can I connect with someone in such an intimate manner when I feel so disconnected from him? He turned into a different person. He became cruel. He complained about anything and everything. If I mentioned that it was a nice day outside, he would find a way to argue that the day was not truly pleasant. While driving, he would comment on how terrible the traffic was in this area. Traffic in his hometown is much worse, and follow up with how eagerly he awaited the end of living here. He would express his disdain for this city and state. Every day, he blamed his bad luck on this move. Since his arrival, I do not think I have heard him say anything positive. It has been exhausting, and when I already had everything else to deal with, I simply could not manage this turmoil as well. I would return home from school eager to discuss my day, but by the end of the conversation, I regretted opening my mouth every single time. I was always the one to initiate conversations, and he provided short, one-word answers that made communication challenging. It felt as though I was talking to a wall. When I attempted to delve deeper with my questions, for example, how was your day? Fine. Oh, okay, what did you do today? Nothing. You must have done something. Nope. If I probed further, he became irritable and replied with hurtful remarks. So I would share how my day went, even though he did not care enough to inquire. Amid my sharing, I would often be interrupted by an Instagram video playing while I was speaking. Other times, I would just stop talking mid-sentence to see if he would notice, and he never did. Somehow, I became the most unbearable person to someone who claimed he wanted to spend his life with me. Naturally, I began to try to improve myself, talk less, argue less, feel less anger, and be more independent. He felt I was too dependent on my mother. But who else could I rely on? Certainly not him. Soon I realized that all he wanted was for me to be quiet and wait for him to want to be bothered by me, and even then stay silent, so I complied. I became a shell of my former self. My body was fatigued from work and school. I felt physically and emotionally drained from being on guard all the time, anticipating the next verbal assault. Yet oddly enough, this was when he appeared the happiest. My family was offering us blessings, expressing hopes for grandchildren and a wedding, even those who were aware of how rocky our relationship had become. I received advice on how I should bite my tongue, be kind, and be patient even when he did not deserve such treatment. In their words, relationships are hard, they require effort. Meanwhile, my grandmother, who was undergoing chemotherapy, continued to refer to him as my fiancé, followed by him laughing or scoffing at the idea. These moments served as illuminating realizations during the darkest period of my life. The sound of his laughter feels akin to someone performing a sternum rub as one regains consciousness after a seizure. After being in darkness for months, even the faintest light can be painful to one's eyes. It feels as if a dull, heavy blade is being dragged across my chest. For the first time in months, I felt every emotion simultaneously, yet I felt nothing at all. With every breath, I felt an uncontrollable urge to cry, but I feared I would never stop, so I held my breath, hoping to suppress the tears. I feel as though I am drowning in this darkness, and I have been holding my breath for a year. The silence has become unbearable and the sadness too profound. The anxious feeling that accompanied any good news I was eager to share has vanished. Instead, I feel anxious about my future, wondering what it will look like. I hope it does not resemble this current situation. I hope I do not grow old with someone who has caused me to lose my voice. At some point, I believed I wanted children, but over the past year, I have convinced myself that I do not. I am better off without them and without him for 18 years, as that would truly confine me. I do not want to have a permanent anchor tying me to this darkness. I hope that one day I can snap out of this and walk away, or that he does, for both our sakes. I hope that when that day arrives, I am strong enough to also rescue the old me from that darkness. I hope she can forgive me for abandoning her for so long. If happiness truly exists, I hope we can all find it one day. I refuse to believe that this is what a healthy relationship looks like, despite what my family and friends assert. Thank you for reading if you have made it this far. Honestly, I just needed to release this weight from my chest, as I already feel like I cannot breathe. I owe this to myself for all the times I choked back tears, held my breath, and remained in this situation out of obligation. Is it normal to feel this way in a relationship?